In the heart of Cebu City, one rainy evening in July 1997, two sisters disappeared without a trace. What began as a missing persons case soon unraveled into one of the most horrifying and controversial criminal trials in Philippine history: the abduction and alleged murder of Marijoy and Jacqueline Chiong sent shockwaves through the nation, plunging a grieving family into despair and thrusting 7 young men into the spotlight of an intense legal battle. But as the years passed, questions began to surface. Did the evidence hold up under scrutiny? Was the judicial system blind to justice, or blinded by pressure? And most disturbingly, was the truth sacrificed for convenience? Even decades later, the mysteries surrounding the fate of Marijoy and Jacqueline are far from resolved. In this video, we revisit the chilling details of that fateful night, the trial that followed, and the lives forever changed. From the streets of Cebu to the halls of international justice, this is a story of tragedy, suspicion, and an enduring quest for the truth. In the beautiful city of Cebu, one of the biggest cities in the Philippines, two young sisters, Jacqueline and Marijoy Chiong, were living normal lives, beloved by their family and friends. Little did they know that a fateful evening in July would lead to one of the most horrifying and controversial criminal cases in Philippine history. It was a rainy evening in Cebu City. The two sisters, Jacqueline and Marijoy Chiong, had spent most of the day running errands. By nightfall, the sisters were near a waiting shed along Archbishop Reyes Avenue, intending to catch a ride home, not knowing that this was the last time they were ever seen again. At 10 p.m., while waiting for a ride home, a white van pulled up beside the waiting shed, and the two were forced inside by a group of guys. Witnesses reported hearing screams of help, but in the end could do nothing to stop the abduction. The Chiong sisters, who had no known enemies, were suddenly missing. Their family waited anxiously that night, but the girls did not return. By morning, their parents launched a desperate search, plastering photos of the sisters around the city and appealing to the public for information, trying their best to search for their loved daughters. But unfortunately, 2 days later, on July 18, 1997, hikers near a ravine in Karkar, Cebu, stumbled upon a gruesome sight. A young woman's lifeless body was found at the bottom of the cliff. Her face and neck were wrapped in masking tape. Her left wrist was cuffed to a tree branch. She had torn pants and her shirt was lifted, exposing signs of physical assault and SA. Her body experienced injuries suggesting she had been beaten and thrown off the ravine. The Chiong family was called immediately to identify the body. As soon as they arrived, they recognized the clothing as younger sister Marijoy's, though the corpse was already decomposing, making physical identification very difficult. Older sister Jacqueline, however, was not found. Till this day, her fate remained a haunting mystery. Months passed without significant leads, but in September 1997, the police made a breakthrough, or so it seemed. A man named Davidson Russia came forward claiming that he was one of the men who committed the crime on the sisters. He said that his conscience was the thing that drove him to come forward and confess. Davidson Russia testified and implicated 7 young men with names including Francisco Paco Laraniaga, Hosman Aznar, Rowan Adlawan, Alberto Canio, Ariel Balansag, and brothers James Andrew Oy and James Anthony Oy. These 7 would later be referred to as the Chiong 7. Russia claimed that the group abducted the sisters, them, and eventually killed Marijoy by throwing her off the cliff. He said Jacqueline's fate was unclear, but the narrative implied she was also murdered. The trial began in 1998, capturing the attention of a nation. It became a media circus, with public opinion largely favoring the Chiong family. However, beneath the surface, significant questions emerged. The prosecution relied heavily on Davidson Russia's testimony. Russia claimed that they snatched the sisters from outside of the Ayala Center in Cebu, forcing them into a car before driving away. He and the other guys took the girls to a house where they did horrible things to the sisters. After they then went and dumped the body Marijoy in Karkar, Cebu, he spoke of how Jacqueline managed to break free from the group, but the men got back into the vehicle and began following her, taunting her from inside the vehicle. The men eventually pulled her back inside, where Rowan beat her until she was unconscious. Later, the group made their way back to Ayala Center in Cebu, where Russia left the group. He claims because of this he did not know the whereabouts of Jacqueline. With that being said, Russia provided a detailed account of the crime and accurately testified of where the body had been dumped, how the sisters had been restrained, and where the pair were abducted from. He also went as far as admitting he had joined in with the R-word of the sisters, but did not take a part in the murder. Despite his sickening recount of the events of that evening, the public still saw Russia as a hero. He was even granted freedom while the rest remained in prison. In exchange for his cooperation, Russia was granted immunity. With this, the prosecutors were able to use it to paint a picture of the crime. What's weird is that the mother of the sisters went as far as bringing gifts to Russia after the testimony, which seemed like a highly unusual gesture to some, as he had just admitted to being a part of the abduction, R-word, and murder of her daughters. Out of the 7, the prominent suspect who gained the media's attention was Francisco Juan Laranaga, who goes by the moniker Paco. He is a 19-year-old culinary student whose mother was a part of the Osmeña family, one of the elite families in Cebu. Being a part of the Osmeña family, as well as his past convictions, made the public perceive him as a rich thug. He was also known to police due to some fights. One in particular was reported to the police in 1995. Paco also had a complaint against him which parallels the Chiong sisters' case. Rochelle Verchesho, a first-year high school student of the University of San Carlos Girls High School, made a formal complaint regarding Paco to the school principal. As she was leaving the school with other classmates, a black Honda Civic pulled up beside the group. An individual identified as Paco got out of the car and attempted to kidnap Rochelle, though was unsuccessful. Having a previous accusation of attempting to kidnap a young woman was not a good look in a case where he has again been accused of kidnapping. Despite the negative attention, Paco was still an asset to the defense. He had the strongest alibi of the group. The defense wanted to present this to illustrate the extent of flaws that can be found within the case. The defense's case heavily argued that the case was riddled with inconsistencies and lacked physical evidence tying the accused to the crime. Paco's legal team presented school records, airline tickets, and testimonies from his teachers and classmates from his school in Quezon City, which was over 500 miles away from Cebu, proving he was in Manila when the crime occurred. The total of 45 witnesses, including respected faculty members, testified under oath that Paco was with them during the time of the abduction. This was later dismissed due to the witnesses being perceived as friends of the accused. They argued that Russia's criminal background and inconsistencies in his story cast doubt on his reliability. During cross-examination, he fainted, preventing further questioning about his testimony, and the lack of evidence regarding Jacqueline raised questions about the completeness of the prosecution's case. Another argument was that there was no DNA testing despite allegations of R-word. No DNA analysis was conducted. Experts questioned whether the semen reportedly found on Marijoy's underwear could conclusively link to any of the 7 guys. Lastly, evidence during the case was mishandled. Items like Marijoy's clothing were stored in a single plastic bag, violating basic forensic protocols and risking contamination. In May 1999, Judge Martin Ocampo delivered a verdict that shocked the defense. All 7 accused were found guilty in charge of kidnapping, R-word, and murder, and each received 2 life sentences. However, on the 3rd of February 2004, the court changed the verdict to the death sentence by lethal injection for all of the 7 except for James Anthony Oy, because he was a minor at the time. But then again, the Philippine government abolished that law in 2006, and the lives of the 7 men were spared. Instead, they received life imprisonment, and in 2009, under a bilateral treaty, Paco Laranaga, a dual citizen, was transferred to Spain to serve his sentence. His family, along with international organizations, continued to campaign for his exoneration. In the end, everything was over. For the Chiong family, it was a victory. They felt justice was served. For the accused and their supporters, it was a travesty, with allegations of judicial bias and a flawed investigation. Throughout the years, controversy and public outcry surfaced. Forensic experts and skeptics questioned whether the body found in Karkar was truly Marijoy's. Marijoy was reportedly 5 feet 4 inches, but the corpse measured only 5 feet. While the prosecution claimed the fingerprints matched Marijoy's, no DNA tests were conducted to confirm the identity, which spreads the question, is it really Marijoy's body? What's truly shocking is that shortly after the trial, Campo was found dead in his hotel room. Authorities ruled it a suicide, citing a note left by the judge. However, his sudden death fueled conspiracy theories. Was he pressured to convict the accused? Or was he not able to contain his guilt and despair over the wrongful ruling? Dozens of theories were created about the case. However, the most shocking reveal was that the father of the sisters, Denisha Chiong, was allegedly working for the controversial Cebu businessman Peter Lim, who has been repeatedly accused of being a prominent drug lord in the region. Mr. Chiong had controlled many drug operations through Mr. Lim's trucking business. Although Mr. Chiong was fired from this position, before the sisters went missing, Mr. Chiong was supposed to act as a witness in a drug case against his former employer. After the daughters went missing, he refused to witness against the unnamed drug lord. It was even alleged that the group of police who arrested Paco were also employed by Peter Lim as bodyguards. So, were Mr. Chiong's daughters' lives used as a form of threat against him? Did this whole case stem from Peter Lim acting to maintain his freedom? So many questions left unanswered. No trace of Jacqueline has ever been found, leading to speculation that she might still be alive. The Chiong sisters case remains one of the most polarizing in Philippine history. For some, it represents justice for a grieving family. For others, it is a cautionary tale of how systemic flaws, judicial pressure, and public opinion can lead to a potential miscarriage of justice. More than 23 years later, the haunting questions linger. Was justice truly served, or were innocent lives ruined to satisfy the thirst for retribution? The real question is, if it wasn't Marijoy's body and those men weren't the killers, then